Welcome. This is a real export story, and if you're an Indian exporter who deals with overseas buyers, this case could have been yours. You exported goods, your buyer paid, the money reached you, and somewhere between England and India, a perfectly honest exporter became part of a Hawala transaction under Indian law without knowing it, without intending it, and without a single person in the chain understanding what they've done. At FEMA Advisors, we see this pattern more often than you would expect, and in this presentation, we are going to walk you through exactly what happened, why it is a FEMA violation and what it costs, and how to handle it correctly the next time. The situation. Let us walk through exactly how this started. An Indian exporter ships goods to a buyer in England. The export is complete. The shipping bill is filed. The EDPMS entry is open and waiting for proceeds to be realized. Then the buyer calls and says he has no bank balance. The payment is stuck. He cannot wire the money right now. So the exporter does what any reasonable business person might do. He asks a friend who happens to be in England to go and collect the payment from the buyer directly. The buyer hands over cash, the friend has the money. And the exporter thinks, lucky, the buyer finally paid. My export is getting settled. This is the exact moment most exporters relax, and it is also the exact moment the FEMA violation begins. The export was legitimate, the goods were real, the intention was honest, none of that matters once the payment leaves the authorized banking channel. The twist. Here is where the story gets complicated. The friend in England is now holding physical cash, the buyer's payment, and here is the problem. He cannot simply walk into a UK bank and wire that cash to India. Depositing and wiring physical cash in the UK requires its own set of banking declarations, source of funds, explanations, and compliance with UK anti-money laundering rules. It is not a simple transaction. So the friend proposes a shortcut. He says, my relatives in India can pay you the equivalent rupee amount directly. You get your money, I deal with the cashier. The Indian exporter agrees. The friend's relatives in India hand over the equivalent rupee amount in cash. No bank, no wire transfer, no international transaction on record anywhere. No SWIFT message, no FIRC, nothing linking the cash paid in England to the cash paid in India. The exporter looks at the rupee cash in hand and thinks, export proceeds received, done. Now let me close the EDPMS entry. This is where the entire structure falls apart. The big wrong. What just happened here is not a creative payment workaround. This is not a practical solution to a difficult situation. Under FEMA, it is the textbook definition of Hawala. No money crossed the border, no bank recorded the transaction. Two unconnected cash exchanges, one in England, one in India, were used to stand in for one cross-border payment. That is precisely how Hawala works, and participating in it, knowingly or unknowingly, is a FEMA violation. The exporter's intent was good. He wanted to get paid for a genuine export. None of that is a defense under FEMA. Why this counts as Hawala? Let us be precise about why this specific arrangement is classified as Hawala under Indian law. First, there was no bank transfer. The buyer's payment never left a UK bank account and never entered an Indian export account through any authorized banking channel. Second, the transaction was settled by a parallel cash exchange. Cash was paid in England and matched by separate cash paid in India. Two domestic cash transactions in two different countries were used to represent one cross-border payment. The money never actually moved internationally. Third, there is no banking trail at all. No SWIFT transfer, no foreign inward remittance certificate, no bank record of any kind linking the England cash to India cash. That missing link, that complete absence of any cross-border banking record is precisely what defines Hawala under Indian law. And fourth, that this is the classic two-leg Hawala structure. Value was transferred between two countries by netting off local cash payments on each side without any physical movement of currency across the border. This is exactly how informal value transfer systems operate. The fact that neither party intended to run a Hawala operation is irrelevant. The structure is Hawala regardless of intent. FEMA rule. Let us now look at what FEMA actually required this exporter to do. The rule is straightforward. Under FEMA, export proceeds must be received into your company's bank account through proper banking channels only, not a personal account, not a cash handover, not a third-party rupee payment. Your company's authorized account through your authorized dealer bank with a clear banking trail from the overseas buyer to your Indian account. Two specific violations happened here. The first is a personal account versus company account issue, even if the export proceeds have arrived through a proper wire transfer but had landed in a personal bank account rather than the company's account. That alone would have been a FEMA violation. The company account requirement is not technicality, it is a mandatory condition. The second is the cash settlement. Settling export proceeds through cash handovers or through any third-party arrangement that bypasses banking channels anywhere in the payment chain violates the mandatory banking channel requirement under FEMA. It does not matter that the cash was genuine, the export was real, the amount was correct, the channel was wrong, and that makes it a violation. The mandatory trap. Now let us look at EDPMS because this is where the regulatory system catches up with transaction. EDPMS stands for Export Data Processing and Monitoring System. Every export shipping bill filed in India stays open in the system until the export proceeds are realized and reported correctly through your authorized dealer bank. It is RBI's real-time tracking mechanism for every Indian export transaction. Here's what happens in this scenario. Cash received outside banking channels is not recognized as valid export realization by EDPMS. Your shipping bill stays open, it stays overdue. The system does not care that you received rupee cash from your friends' relatives. There is no FIRC, no bank credit confirmation, no authorized channel record. So far as EDPMS is concerned, your export proceeds have not been realized. Once the shipping bill is overdue beyond the prescribed period, it is automatically flagged. Your authorized dealer bank gets the flag, the RBI gets the flag. EDPMS closure requires proof that proceeds were received via proper banking channels into your company account. Hawala cash leaves no valid proof. You cannot close the entry because the entry cannot be closed with the documentation you have. And an open EDPMS entry is not an administrative inconvenience. It is a direct red flag for the Enforcement Directorate and a common trigger for FEMA show cause notices against exporters. The longer the entry stays open and unresolved, the worse the enforcement exposure becomes. What this costs you, let us be direct about what this one payment decision actually costs. Under FEMA, the maximum penalty for a violation involving export proceeds is 3 times the entire export transaction value, not the disputed portion, not the amount that was received through the wrong channel, the entire export value. This is the ceiling that enforcement directorates can apply. On top of that, there is a continuing penalty of 5,000 rupees per day for every day the EDPMS entry remains open and unresolved. If this situation drags even for 6 months, this is over 9 lakh rupees in continuing penalties on top of the principal amount. And the third consequence is the freeze effect on your business. An open enforcement flag affects your future export benefits, your ability to obtain RBI approvals for subsequent transactions, and your relationship with your authorized dealer bank. A bank that sees an unresolved FEMA issue on your export account becomes cautious about processing your next shipment. The exporter made one practical decision in a difficult situation. That decision now carries a penalty exposure of up to 3 times the export value, a continuing daily penalty, and a potential impact on every future export transaction. So should this have been handled? So how should have this been handled? Here are 4 steps that would have kept this exporter clean. Step 1. If the buyer genuinely lacked bank balance and could not pay immediately, the correct path was a delayed payment plan with a formal extension request submitted to the AD bank before the realization deadline expired. A delayed wire transfer with proper documentation is manageable, a cash workaround is not. Step 2. If a third party absolutely needed to be involved in the payment, a formal tripartite agreement must be in place before the payment is made. The agreement must document the relationship between the exporter, the buyer, and the third party payer. Be disclosed to the AD bank in advance and be referenced on the export invoice. No agreement, no valid third party payment. Step 3. Every rupee or pound of export proceeds must land in the company's bank account through the authorized dealer. There are no exceptions to this rule, not for convenience, not for urgency, and not because the amount is small. Step 4. EDPMS must be closed on time every time. The moment proceeds are received through the correct channel, report the realization to your AD bank promptly. So the shipping bill closes within the prescribed period. Do not let open bills accumulate. Have you already received export proceeds through an incorrect channel? Is there an EDPMS entry sitting open on past shipment that you have not been able to close? Have you received payments in cash through a personal account or through a third party without a tripartite agreement? Do not wait for EDPMS flag to become an AD notice. The window to regularize these situations is open right now. Once enforcement proceedings begin, the options narrow considerably. At FEMA Advisors, we help exporters regularize open EDPMS entries, structure compliant tripartite payment agreements for future transactions, and respond to FEMA show cause notices before the penalties compound. Call us at 9933385556 or visit FEMAbyte.com. Don't guess with FEMA, call FEMA Advisors.